Hello and welcome to Feminist Economics 101, when Jones, a scholar like me, chat with senior scholars about what is feminist economics and how it contributes to the field of study. My name is Ricardo Salas. I am an student of the University of Massachusetts Amherst. The focus of my research is history, central banking, and discrimination. Today, I am very happy because I am interviewing Professor Radhika Balakrishnan. She is the faculty director of the Center for Women's Global Leadership and professor of the Department of Women's and Gender Studies at Rutgers University. Her work focused on gender and development, gender and the global economy, human rights, and economic and social rights. Her research aims to change the lens through which macroeconomic policy is interpreted and applied. As an example, how to broaden the macroeconomic policy goals in order to achieve the increase of substantive freedoms and choices that people have during their lives. She advocates to applying international human rights norms to assess macroeconomic policy. Among the principles that are discussed in her work, there are two that has been in several stress during the current pandemic. First, the non-retrogression of states, that when a right is achieved, it must be maintained. And we are seeing how we are backward on that now. Second, the minimum essential level satisfaction. These are the minimum levels that should be guaranteed by states even under severe resources constraints. And now we are facing a challenge on that minimum essentials that we have been achieving during the last several decades. These two, just to give a hint of the importance of her work for our understanding and application of economics. After this brief and maybe not enough introduction of her work, I will proceed to the first question. Professor Radhika, welcome. And can you tell us about what you do and how it relates to feminist economics?
Yeah, thank you so much for interviewing me. This is very exciting and I'm very happy to be here. Um, I think that, going back to when I was a graduate student, I was always interested in issues of gender equality. And I was studying economics. And at the time when I was finishing my dissertation, my department had actually turned from being a very kind of heterodox department to a very neoclassical department. And so, and I was caught in the middle of that, but I wanted to do work on issues of gender. And I was very lucky because I had two professors, Lourdes Benaria, who was at Rutgers when I got there, and Michelle Naples and Nina Shapiro. There are three. I mean, it's three women economists in a department. It's kind of a lot, and I was lucky enough to study with them. And so my dissertation actually looked at issues of sex ratios in India, the population of men to women or male to female in India. And I looked at the state that I'm from, Kerala, which was one of the states at that time that had a positive sex ratio. And so I was trying to figure out, well, why, what is it about this state that makes it different from other states? So that was sort of my first big thing in terms of, and we didn't call it feminist economics. I think at that time we were calling it gender and development. And so that was the first kind of academic work that I'd done, was my own PhD dissertation. And then the big, huge project that I took on after that, which falls very much into feminist economics, was I was asked to design a 5-country study on subcontracted workers in Asia. And so the book that came out of it's called The Hidden Assembly Line. And we looked at India, Philippines, Pakistan, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. And we were able to conduct this huge, we got funded to do this work. And we put together research teams in those 5 countries to look at the relationship between macroeconomic policy and workers' lives, and what was happening as work was getting subcontracted, and what happens to the gender dynamics, what are the kind of issues that women were kind of dealing with. I'll give you an example. For example, in In Pakistan, we found that women's public mobility was not easy because of transportation issues, and that subcontracted work actually brought work into the home. But at the same time, it was, piece rate, no benefits, and all the other kind of issues that went. So my first big, huge research project that falls completely within what we would call feminist economics. And then, as you said, um, and then I got involved in doing this um, uh, intersection of human rights and economic policy. And, and I was working very much as an activist doing human rights work and trying to use human rights to apply to the US. And I was part of a network called the US Human Rights Network. And then it was very clear that as more and more people were looking at economic and social rights, that there needed to be that link with human rights and economic policy, because a lot of the human rights folks were lawyers who didn't necessarily know economics and macroeconomic policy. And so I started doing work on that. My first big project was with Diane Elson, and the two of us did a big, huge two-country study, the US and Mexico, on economic power, and the book is called Economic Policy and Human Rights, holding governments to account. That was the project. But again, went to Mexico, formed teams of researchers so that the work stayed in Mexico, and I didn't go and like write about somebody and come back. So the book is an edited book with teams of researchers in both countries. I wrote most of the stuff on the US, and with Diane, and the chapters on Mexico. And we looked at, for example, fiscal policy, tax policy, monetary policy, regulation. We looked at pension reform and trade policy. Those were the 5 issues we looked at in both those countries. And then since then, I've been working, and actually James Heinz, in your department, came as an advisor to my group that we did in the work in Mexico. And then the two of us, and Diane and him and I, have been working together for many, many years. And as you know, we've been publishing work together for quite some time.
That is wonderful. And you are so lucky of having women in your department. That is wonderful that I'm saying this.
I know.
20 years after, and still we are seeing that such a gap between women and men in the departments that is like, it's scary. Sometimes it's
so scary. And especially, women of color. Where are you gonna, it's like if we demarcated down, there aren't that many. I don't know what the numbers are now in terms of women in economics departments at the PhD level. It's pretty small, it's tiny. And most of us are in other departments. We're not in economics departments.
Yes, so the second question is very related to this. Women are absent sometimes of the talk in economics. So how do feminism and economics fit together? How we make this work?
Well, I was thinking about the answer to this question. I mean, feminism is about wanting to have equality in substantive equality in the world. And if you don't address economics, you're not going to get sort of substantive equality, right? And so to me, it's a natural fit. And also, I've been asked many times, you're a feminist economist, so you work on women. And I say, no, I'm a feminist economist because I work on the economy. And if you are an economist and you don't notice that there's half of the population might be different, then you're a bad economist, not that you're a feminist economist. You know what I mean? Like, how could you not notice that there's differences in the economy in terms of how people relate? The unpaid care work that predominantly women have to do, inequality in wage structure. I mean, all the kind of things that are feminist economics is economics. I mean, it's just, so if you walk into a room and you don't notice that there are different kinds of people in the room, you just can't see. So, I mean, to me, I think it's a natural fit. And I think all economists should become feminists.
Well, you were talking about the blindness of the economist in the room. We don't see the giant white elephant, and in this case, it's not the giant white elephant, but the absence of half the elephant in the
Exactly.
room. And
Exactly. Exactly.
you told me before that it was not called feminist economics back then. So how has feminist economics, even with the name or no, even the name, evolved in the last 10 or 20 years? Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I was actually one of the founding members of the International Association for Feminist Economics. And I don't remember the actual meeting, but it was a meeting of the American Economic Association, the ASSA meetings. And there was always this committee on the status of women in the economics profession, CSWEP, and all of us would go to that meeting when we were at the ASSAs. And most of the time we were just talking about how do we increase the number of women in the profession. But then there was a group of us that says, look, it's not just about numbers, it's about having an analysis, a feminist analysis in economics. It can't just be about how many women, but how do we actually address the kind of ideological issues that we need to bring up in economics as a field. And we all walked out of the CISWEP meeting, and that's how we started IAFI. And it was a small group of us, and then we met. And then I'd say one big contribution that's happened over the last 25 years is the journal, Feminist Economics, because then you got to publish in an economics journal when you had feminist interests, right? Whereas most of the mainstream journals would, I remember when I was doing my dissertation, and in the time that the department became more neoclassical, they said, oh, you want to look at issues on gender? You go to sociology. We don't do that in economics, right? So the fact that the journal existed meant that you could get published. Uh, it is now a word. Feminist economics is a word that's well recognized, written about in op-eds in the New York Times. None of us ever thought that 25 years ago we would be here now. But still, there are very few departments, economics departments, where you can actually have a field in. Your department is one of the unusual ones, where people can actually study feminist economics. And so I think it's evolved a great deal. I have to say that the Young Scholars Initiative of IAFI is just such a bright light to see so many young scholars coming in and saying, we want this. That to me is like, in Galway, the last meeting, there was a pre-conference with all the young scholars. I have to say that was really just one of the highlights of all my time in IAFI. So I think it's evolved a lot. It's become a recognized field. It's a global field. IAFI is really, when we started, it was very American. It really is international now, and has had global reach. So I think it's placed this field of research into the mainstream and being recognized as, you can get tenure being published in feminist economics. That's kind of huge. That's kind of huge.
Yeah, and the journal is one of the best journals in metrics that you don't expect. Like you have a lot of, of fields that converge in feminist economics, and at the same time, it opens the world to other journals to accept papers on feminist economics. I think now it is tied to any other topics, and as you work in macroeconomics, you can talk about feminist economics in macroeconomics journals, and also you can talk about feminist economics in history of economics, and
Exactly.
that is great.
Exactly.
So now you talk about your contribution to IAFI. Now the question backward, how was the role, or what was the role that IAFI has played in your career development?
It was a really, really important place for me, because it was a place, I was on I think the first board of IAFI as a young person coming out of grad school. Um, it was it was a place where I didn't feel alone. in the ways I was thinking. And I got to learn from people, uh, friendships that have spanned 30 years now, all came out of being part of AYFI. I mean, to be honest, I'm at a stage in my career where I don't need to go to conferences, but AYFI is the one conference that I always go to, because it's about the looking at new research, learning from people from there, uh, and being amongst your friends who you sort of worked with and uh, over so many years. And I think it's a really important place for me. It has been an important place for me to feel that there's, you know, a academic place where I belong. And IAFI has given me that academic place where I belong, which I wouldn't say about most of the other conferences.
Oh, I had the opportunity to be at Glasgow in the WISE Hyper conference and then in the AFI conference. And as you said, it is wonderful. You feel that it's a talk with friends all the time. It is not like they're judging your work. They are wanting you to improve your work. And I think your work is and they are gonna say maybe not like this, but it's the least important thing. They care about you.
Yep.
And you belong. That is wonderful. And this is a feeling that IAFI has that is just weird in economics.
Well,
Well,
it's the feminist part of it. I mean, that's why we're there. We're feminists. We want, it's not about some, trying to be smarter than someone else. It's about having a movement.
yes, it was wonderful. So about all your experience, we want you to get a little bit of advice from you. What advice will you give to young scholars who are at the beginning of their career, like me, or to your younger self?
I would say one advice I would give is uh, find senior scholars to uh, spend time with and become and who can give you advice. Um, I mean, you're lucky in your department. You have a lot of people there who can give you advice. Not every uh, young scholar is in a department that has others that they can go to. And so if you're in a department that doesn't have feminist economists in the graduate program, come to an IAFI conference and find us, and start engaging and figuring it out. I mean, I know that the Young Scholars Initiative is trying to do a mentor program for young scholars. I think that's a really important one, and I think it's something that uh, I I'm personally committed to, but I know most of us are, because it's the life of the ideas will only last if there's a whole new generation of people that come in. So I would say find mentors, and come to the conferences. I mean, even though this year is virtual, hopefully we won't have a virtual the year after. But get to know people, and then I'm speaking for all of the members of IAFI, but I really don't think there's a person in IAFI who would not want to spend time mentoring young people coming up, send work, get input. Um, when I went on the job market the first time, I remember that I did mock interviews with some senior scholars. It's like, okay, how do I answer that? And that helped me out so much. And these were just people I knew. And I was just lucky that they gave me the time. But I think now I feel like we're getting it more structured, so that there's places where we can actually do something like that, and find ways in order to encourage people. And also I think the Young Scholars Initiative is such a great place. That didn't exist in my time. So I think that's an important one. But I would say, yeah, reach out, find people that whose ideas you're interested in, and get to know them, and see how they can help you. And as I said, I mean, I sound like a commercial for IAFI, but I am the president. So the current president, so I have to do a commercial, but I think it's a really important organization. And I think that's why, I've spent, this is my third time on the board of AYFI since it started. So it really is a place that's important to me. And I think an important place for others to come and take it over. We're all getting old, so we need a new generation to come and take over the organization.
It's wonderful. And well, a last comment, it is just positionality is something we don't talk in economics, and you just did it. This is my version because I am part of the AFI, and it's wonderful to recognize. And thank you for the advice. Thank you for your time, Professor Radhika. And thank you all for watching this episode of Feminist Economics 101. I will invite you all to continue watching the series on AFI's YouTube channel and everything else that we have on AFI. I think that is a large community. And as Professor Radhika said, we will have an online conference. So be welcome and goodbye.